Very much. It's lovely to be back with you, and I thought I would share with you that vital barometer of public opinion, the cab driver who brought me here from the station. And he said, "So why are you going to the conference centre?" I said, "Well, it's the National Association of Pension Funds." Oh, pensions. I hadn't at this point revealed anything. Oh, he said, "I'm 55 next year. I'm taking my money out." I didn't ask what sort of car he was going to buy. And he said, "Yeah, you know, I've had it with all this. I'm taking my money out." I thought, oh, good, you know, brownie point there. He said, "Mind you," he said, "these politicians, they've never done anything for me. So I'm voting UKIP next time round." So I thought, okay. So anyway, when it comes to being affirmed, as in that journey, I was slightly less than affirmed a couple of weeks ago when the Institute of Directors put out a press release. And it was headed, "Pensions Minister should be abolished." It's kind of hard not to take that personally, really. I actually, the press office in the department just stopped me issuing the Institute of Directors should be abolished press release. But why did they say that? Because they were tired. Too much reform. Too much going on. Would quite like a 5-year sabbatical, just to catch up with the first 5 years, and then maybe we'll have a pensions minister again after 5 years. And I get that, but I kind of think the job's not done just yet. So I actually wholeheartedly agree with Joanne's suggestion that we should take pensions out of politics once I'm out of politics. And in fact, I can reveal to you that many of you will be aware that this government has been unique because we have legislated for fixed-term parliament. So no longer can the Prime Minister of the day just choose when the election will happen. It's fixed. It's 5 years. And it dawned on me on the way up that what I need to do is table an amendment when I get back to the Fixed-Term Parliaments Act and delete 5 years and insert 10. And so I'll be doing that, just to let you know, and those of you who are tweeting word by word, if you can use the font Ironic Sans at this point, that'd be very helpful. And so what I'll do today, hopefully, is give you my forward agenda for the next 5 years. You never know. And also just give you an update on where we are so far. And I'll do it through the lens of a commentator on the pensions industry. And this is a rather unique commentator who sees the positive, who recognises the achievements, and just to pick a name at random, I'm going to call him Tom McSuccess, I think, just to pick a name at random. And Tom McSuccess spots, yes, he's realistic about the downsides, but actually sees what a huge amount has been achieved and what potential we've got going forward if we get it right. So where have we got to and where are we heading? So first of all, the new state pension comes in April 2016. I've been told I can't call it the single tier anymore because nobody knew there was more than one tier in the first place. So nobody knew what we were talking about. So it's, after a lot of brand research and market testing, we've established we have to call it the state pension. And you think I'm joking. So the new single tier, the new state pension will be in place in April 2016, as we said it would, and the joy of abolishing contracting out. Now, there's not many audiences you can say that to, but just come with me on this. The letters I write to people saying, why aren't I getting a full pension? What's this cod? What's this shadow cod? You wouldn't believe it. We can get rid of all of that and simply have a single, simple, decent state pension. As Joanne said, we can tell Sam, chances are 7,500, and then you're on your own. And that's got to be a better place. And of course, as you in this room know, the budget freedoms, which I was delighted we were able to announce in March, were built on the foundation of the new state pension. Without a simple, single, decent state pension, you can't really let people do what they want with their pension money. So, vital foundation coming in April 2016. Built on next by automatic enrolment. Huge success, 4.7 million people automatically enrolled, 90% staying in. And we published some statistics this week which showed that the group where the pension participation has risen by the most is the 20-somethings. The 20-somethings. Now, there were naysayers. I know you find this hard to believe. There were naysayers who said 20-year-olds, they're saving for a house, they're paying off their student debt, they won't be interested in pensions. and they have the highest staying-in rates and the biggest growth in participation. That's a huge achievement. That gives me hope for the future. So we're getting people in. We published a consultation yesterday on the threshold at which we ought to enrol people. Now, I believe we were right to get that threshold to a serious level, to the 10,000 level that it is this year. Because without that, the de minimis, the minimum amount people would have been putting in could have been a derisory amount, which would have brought the whole thing into disrepute. So 10,000 for this year is the right number in my judgment, especially with a single-tier pension, a new state pension of 7,500 or so. But the consultation that we put out this week, and I'd be really grateful for your feedback on, offers a list of alternatives of where we go from here. Do we index link it to prices or wages? Do we continue linking to the tax threshold, bearing in mind the tax threshold is going to go hopefully up and up and up? Or do we do it a new way? Do we do it a la Adair Turner? And do we say, look, what we're really after is people on a low wage getting, say, 80% of their pre-retirement income in retirement? And what does that imply for the threshold? Now we know what the new state pension rate's going to be. We know what someone on, say, 10,000 a year takes home. Funnily enough, 80% of that is very close to the single-tier rate, the new state pension rate. So should we actually now link that threshold to the state pension rate rather than to the tax threshold? Be very interested in your feedback, and this is not remotely an attempt to lead the audience, but it's option 4, by the way. So that's what we're consulting on. Tomorrow, we are publishing a document. And it is, I know you love these things, Joanne, because it keeps the NAPF in business. And we're grateful for the way, very grateful for the way that the NAPF brings the views and voice and perspective and expertise of your members to these consultations. It is genuinely appreciated. This is the command paper. This is tomorrow's document. Now, if I tell you I've been told not to give this to anybody, because there's a line that's got Tipex on it in this copy, and I'll have a sweepstake later on, see if anyone, when they get their copy tomorrow, can work out which line we Tipexed out. But actually, I'm not going to leave it anywhere near Joanne. And what's it about? It's about next April. Now, it was suggested to us that there's a lot going on next April. So maybe that charge cap thing, maybe we should just put it back a bit. Well, to momentarily, and for the first and only time in my life, switch into Margaret Thatcher mode, no, no, no. April 2015, charge cap. And that's not just an event, it's the first next step in a process. The war on charges, value for money. Gone will be the days when a government thought that a government-approved pension product could charge 1.5% for 10 years, and that was all right. So instead, 0.75% from next April. Active member discounts and commission banned from 2016. Another look at the charge cap in 2017 to see if we should have transaction costs in and to see what the level of the cap should be. A progressive action driving value for money. Now, transaction costs are, for me, the murky secret in the cupboard of the industry. Because trustees don't know, by and large, what's happening to their members' money and what's been sliced and diced out of it. And what this document does is places a duty on trustees and governance committees to find out, to ask the awkward questions, to establish where money is going out of the value of the pension and is it for a good reason. Because we wondered whether to include transaction costs in the charge cap back for 2015, and we realised we hadn't got a clue. We wouldn't have known what number to put in, what to include, because we just didn't have the information. And next April will be a radical throwing open of the light into the musty corners of the industry, which will give value for money for scheme members. The data will be gathered, we'll look at it and decide what to do about it. Transformative, I believe. So auto-enrolment continues to go well, I believe. But then what do you do with your pot? And that was always the $64,000 or £30,000 question. What do you do with your pension pot? That was always the thing that came up in interviews. It's all very well, Mr. Webb, all this building up a pension pot, but I don't like what I have to do with it at the end. And that's why the budget announcements were so transformative. Real freedom and choice for people, but equipped to make that choice through guidance. Now, the Chancellor will be very shortly announcing our partners for the phone-based guidance, for the face-to-face guidance. The website's under construction. There's a team at the Treasury working, I suspect, night and day, but certainly very extensively on this. We recognise that there is not a huge amount of time before next April, but the momentum is gathering all the time. And people say, and Joanne said, sure, one conversation at retirement isn't enough. It's an awful lot better than no conversations at retirement. And that's where we come from in too many cases. And one of the things the guidance guarantee can do is signpost people so that people will actually realise what they know, but also what they don't know and where they can find out more. So absolutely, next April is not the end of a story, it's the beginning of a story, it's the beginning of the next chapter. But I'm very excited about the potential. Yes, there are risks. Will somebody get it wrong next April? Yes. Will somebody blow the lot and wish they hadn't? Yes. That's what happens when you trust people with their own money. But I'd rather default to trusting people than assume the state knows best. Now, I just want to toss one little thought in here. One of the points that's been made to me is, what about the people who've already locked into an annuity, who are feeling rather bitter that they came just the wrong side of the line? Now, I don't believe this government will change that this side of the election. We've got one or two things to get on with. But it's something just gnawing away in the back of my mind, and things that gnaw in the way in the back of my mind sometimes get a bit further. So I'm just wondering whether I, as someone standing for the next election, should say, actually, if I'm part of the next government, I'd like to enable the unwinding of some of those annuities as well, so that more people can share in that freedom. And just to stress, that's not the government speaking, that's just Steve Webb. So it may never happen. And then we've got these new freedoms. We're working on the guarantee guidance. And, of course, the pension schemes bill that's going through Parliament now will table a batch of amendments hopefully next week, which will set out the legal framework for the guidance, the requirement, for example, to take independent financial advice if you want to transfer out of DB, the way that the levy will be raised to pay for the guidance, a whole raft of things on that. We've got a whole week. Those of you who are journalists in the audience, we've got a whole week of oral evidence. Everybody who's anybody in the pensions world, you will know what they think about CDC and all the rest of it. A real fest next week. And the pension scheme bill will do something else, and this is the fourth strand of what we're doing. It will create the framework for shared risk or defined ambition pensions, create the framework for collective pensions. And I saw a tweet this morning that one of the breakout sessions voted 80% thought CDC had a future in this country. Someone said by the end of the meeting it had fallen a bit, but we'll gloss over that. And I absolutely think it does. And there are developments in countries that have got CDC-type schemes that I think are very exciting and very significant, because we're starting to see individual DC schemes starting to offer CDC options. Instead of lifestyling the individual pot, for example, saying to people in 45, actually you can put some of your money in the collective here, just reducing the volatility, increasing the scale and the pooling. And as soon as there is a route from individual DC to collective DC, I think we're in. So I believe that by acting ahead, because, you know, the naysayers, you remember them? Oh, nobody will be interested. But actually, by acting ahead, by legislating calmly, by getting the structure in place, by consulting, as the demand rises, as it surely will, we'll have a structure in place. And that will be one of the lasting legacies of this government. Though I think you have to be dead to have a legacy, so I'm not going to talk about that yet. What about the forward agenda? What still needs to be done? 8% is not enough, people say. And they're right. So what do we do to get beyond that? Well, people say, what about compulsion? And in a way, the case for compulsion might have been stronger 2 or 3 years ago. But when you've got 90% staying in voluntarily, and in fact, I think we can go above that, because the biggest group who opt out are the older pensioners, the older workers. And they opt out because, quote, we don't want to lock our money up. You don't lock your money up anymore. So why wouldn't you at 57 or 61 accept being auto-enrolled, take your employer's contribution, put your money in, put the tax relief in, and then take it when you want it? So I think that will boost staying in rates. Now, of course, we're going to go to the small firms, and that presents different challenges, but overall, I think we're going to keep very high. So if most people overwhelmingly are staying in, why would you then at that point force the tiny minority who are not, who've chosen not to do so? So I don't think compulsion's the answer. But what about turning 8% mandatory into 10, 12, 15, whatever you think the number is? Could do. But in a voluntary system, the risk is opt-out. And if people go straight in at 12 or 15, do we suddenly see mass opt-out, and then we're back where we started almost? So is there a way of finessing these two? I think there is. I think default auto-escalation, to use a catchy street phrase, default auto-escalation is probably the answer, but I'm open to alternatives. What does default auto-escalation mean? It means you go in at 8, and unless you opt out, each pay rise, and hopefully there will be pay rises, each pay rise, a bit of that goes in your pension. Now, the analysts in my department are already salivating at the prospect of writing this consultation paper, because you could have low stepping up for young people, on the basis it's great they're in and you don't need to do too much work, and high for older people. You could have low stepping up for low earners, on the basis the state pension's got them most of the way there, and rapid stepping up for higher earners because they're much further short. You could think of lots of permutations. You need to do something for people who change jobs a lot. But in principle, I think default auto-escalation is probably the best answer I've come across to the 8% is not enough. Because what I don't want is people reaching pension age and saying, hang on a minute, you created a state pension at that level, you made me put 8% in, and now I've not got the standard of living I thought I was going to. Why did you let me do that? You based the system on inertia. I was inert. I did what you told me. And you've let me down. So yes, we've got to get everybody in, but then we have to get everybody up. And finally, tax relief. Now, this is the one I think where it's very hard to take the politics out of pensions. Tax relief is a hugely political topic. I think it's probably the one where there's the least agreement across the political spectrum. I simply think the current structure will not hold. The fact that governments of all parties keep fiddling with it tells you something. It tells you they're short of money. And bear in mind, if you think austerity's been easy so far, presumably government's done the easy spending cuts. And if there's billions more to go, there's some pretty tough stuff ahead. So governments are going to look elsewhere other than spending cuts, or as well as spending cuts. And when you see something that on some measures costs 37 billion, or it depends how you ask the question, it's inevitable, I think, the next government will look at it. And what I would urge the industry to do is get ahead of the game. Say what you think it should look like. I think it should be flat rate. I think it should be higher than the current basic rate, lower than the current higher rate. You could describe it as matching. For every £3 you put in, the taxpayer puts in £1. Same for the employer. Now, are there difficult practical issues? Yes. Are they insurmountable? No. But what that would do is give you potential fiscal savings, ultimately a clearer system, and far more people on ordinary income saving more into their pensions than they currently are. And that's a remarkable combination of things for something that raises money for the Exchequer. So that's where I'd go, but hey, what influence am I going to have? So, as an observer, my friend Tom, what do I think of all of that? If you'd offered me 5 years ago a reformed state pension, mass membership through workplace pensions of quality, low-cost schemes, new models of pension saving, and freedom to do what you want with your pension pot supported by independent guidance, on balance, I'd have taken it. Do I think the job's finished? No, I don't. But do I think we've gone an awfully long way so far? Yes, I do. I want to thank each one in this room for your part in the extraordinary improvements we've made in that last 4 years. And I hope to have the chance to work together with you just for a little bit longer in the future. Thank you very much.